I think the decision fatigue was more real in finance. I don't think I handled it the same as I did in tennis. If I look back at all the slip-ups that I did have, they all came when I was super fatigued. And that's not good for the client. That's not good for the company. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for me. You can't communicate that, though, when you're in that pressure cooker, because it comes off as like weakness. And they're like, well, we have the next person lined up from Harvard, so we'll just slot you out.
Josh, welcome to Decisions That Count.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Okay, so I really just want to get into tennis with you. It's such a strategic sport and you're constantly making decisions on court. I think when you look at it, every single swing is a decision. Can you just talk us through the types of decisions that you'll make during play?
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased. I've been a tennis player my whole life, but I really do think it's like the most strategic sport, most challenging physical and mental sport. It is just a million split-second decisions. One thing that I've sort of hung my hat on my entire life as a tennis player is just controlling what you can control. A lot of times you're thinking about what the opponent is doing, and that's, I think, where you lose yourself. But so long as you're controlling all the variables that you can control for, so your serve, your toss, your attitude, your effort, your positioning on the court, your game plan, like those are the things that you should focus on in terms of like making decisions, and the rest is just it's gonna happen. Whatever happens. So I'm a huge believer in like just control what you can, and then the rest is sort of up to fate.
I got to ask, so have you heard of decision fatigue? Like in all your life of tennis and whatnot, has that ever come up?
Yeah, it actually has. It's a huge thing in tennis because you see it so much with players like into the third set or the fifth set if it's the pros. That's where when they physically become fatigued, they start changing up their way of playing. They might be going for shots that they don't usually go for, stupid decisions, as opposed to sticking with their patterns, right, that they know works. So decision fatigue is always like preached in tennis as if you can either get your opponent to that point, or the flip side of it is, don't let yourself get to that point. And how do you control that? It's tough, because I think that's probably what makes champions versus not. It's like when you get to that point of fatigue, can you still think clearly and make right decisions, or are you going to start checking out and going for shots that you wouldn't otherwise go for? But yeah, from like a scientific standpoint outside of tennis, I haven't dived into it at all. So definitely curious to see like what you guys, think about it, what you know about it. Because it is huge in sports and then also in life, I think, too.
It's interesting because when I think of decision fatigue in sport, I tend to default, but I tend to think that a lot of athletes will go to, because one of the consequences of decision fatigue is you default to what's the safest decision, right? And so like you may use a swing or something that you're comfortable with and it's an appropriate time or position to do so. But another consequence of decision fatigue, which we've seen ourselves, is actually impulsive decisions. Yeah. So like we did a big trial with video gamers, and when they suffer from decision fatigue, they get way more impulsive in their decision making. What's interesting about sport, though, from like a neuroscience perspective, is you see the consequences of your decisions right away. Right? Yeah. And it's huge mental resilience to not get that emotional component in. So if you make a bad play on the court, right, you tend to get mad at yourself or angry or whatnot. And then it just leads to like this cycle of you're angry, you're emotional, then you make more bad decisions. Yeah. And so decision fatigue can be this runaway train of bad decisions, which as an athlete, it's just the biggest battle. Yeah. And to go back what you said is like you control yourself. And that's, I totally believe, not that I'm a pro athlete, but like, I think the difference in champions is that control of self, which is exceptional.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned that with gamers being like the impulsive decision is sort of what, leads them astray. I think that's the same with tennis. It's not so much you default to a safe routine style of play. I think that would actually be better if that was the case when you get fatigued. But it really is, you start impulsively doing things that are outside of your baseline safe level of play, right? So that's where you can get into some serious like trouble and sort of lose yourself later in a match when you do get fatigued.
It's so interesting to me because I thought you would be defaulting to the safest option. You'd be defaulting to the predictable swing, because I thought in tennis you would want to be unpredictable and you would want to be surprising your opponent with a variety of different moves.
It's so much the opposite. It's
Really?
we have these funny sayings in tennis. I remember in college, if somebody strays from their pattern and you start to see the decision fatigue, and then you know that they're starting to crack, like us guys on the bench would be yelling oh, he's checked out mentally, check out, he's done. And it's because they're making these impulsive moves instead of sticking to their patterns, which is their safety net.
Do you see it with the pros, when you watch pro tennis?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the first chink in the armor that you look for is when they make that decision that's whoa, that's not normal. That's not typical for them. So it's this weird, back and forth mental thing. You don't want to show it, being the one that's in control. You don't want to show that you have a little chink in your armor, but then you're also looking for the chink in their armor too.
Well, at that level, physical conditioning must be pretty similar, right? Physical fitness.
Yes and no. I mean, some athletes are gifted from a younger age, and others have to catch up in that department. But more or less, they should be capable of going the distance, playing 5-hour matches. That's one way that I personally worked through that. Was I might not be the most physically imposing or talented player in the world, but I can train harder than 90 whatever percent of you, and that's how I'm going to catch up, so that my decision fatigue happens in hour 5 as opposed to hour 3. And that's where I'll give myself the best chance to sort of outperform. So it just depends on what you're given. If you're 6'6", huge serving 140 miles per hour, you don't need to be the most physically fit runner, right? It just depends on what you're given. So that plays a huge part into it too.
Did you know that decision fatigue is a physiological limitation of the brain?
No, but as you're saying it, I kind of feel like that makes sense. Maybe.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
I think before I met Shawn, I was I just thought it was tiredness.
Yeah.
It was emotion. It was stress.
Okay.
You know? So I thought I was cracking under pressure, or I was feeling stressed or emotional, or I was just tired, but it's not.
Yeah. I mean, there obviously is willpower to a lot of components, but elite sport, military, any time when you're really, really pushing yourself and the decisions you're making are particularly emotionally engaging, which any competitive athlete, you're heavily invested in it, right? Basically, the communication between your neurons starts to degrade. So they're having trouble talking to one another. And those unique networks that's required for strategic thinking start to fail, so your brain will use other networks, right?
Okay.
It also starts to degrade the control you have over your emotions. So your prefrontal cortex, where it happens, it's a control center for a lot of your emotional centers.
Yeah.
That degrades. That
checks out. Because tennis players, they lose it emotionally when they start to fatigue.
Yeah, and it's the interesting part, because I'm a physiologist, not a psychologist at all, right? Is it's a biological limit. So it's not a personal failing of willpower.
Can you train that to push past? Because in my eyes, it's always been a willpower thing, and I've always just tried to bully it through. How can I overtrain so that I can, like I said, get my limit to hour 5, not hour 3? Mm-hmm. Is that something that you can, I don't know, train, or is it innate?
There are innate components to it, but definitely in top tier sports now, people are trying to train for it, especially in hardcore strategic sports like tennis, F1 driving as well, because that's they're basically doing a marathon while
life or death decisions.
Yeah, right. And one mechanism that's becoming quite popular is called cognitive motor dual tasking. One study was a volleyball player, and you measure how high they jump, right? Yeah. And just for the purpose, make it super simple. Say it's 10 units, whatever, centimeters or inches, doesn't matter. Say 10 off the court, that's how high they jump. And then on the court, that same player during a game setting, they're actually trying to track how high they jump, and they only jump 7. Yeah. Right? So there's a 30% drop in their physical capabilities. It's because actually their brain is trying to process all what's happening on the court strategically. So it's in tennis, maybe you serve at a certain speed when there's no opponent, but then when there's an opponent, you see a drop in physical performance.
Yeah, everyone hits bigger in practice. Average mile per hour on a forehand or backhand is going to be 5 to 10 more.
Right.
than like match play.
So that's exactly it. It's that once your brain has to divert its focus from just a simple physical task to all the strategic things, it's cognitive motor dual tasking, right? So it's something that your brain's trying to handle both of those things at once.
So that aspect of it, you could train like closing that gap.
Yeah.
So like whatever your actual limit is, you might have like a limit.
We all have a limit. Your brain has it just like your muscles do, right? So there is a hard limit, but that ability, like that gap you see from practice to gameplay, that can be trained, or like products to help with it as well. Is that infrastructure of your brain? It's like if you think of your brain as a city, it's making the roads wider, bigger, faster, so information flow is easier. Because then it's an athlete. Imagine if your practice is the same as your gameplay.
I know. I wish.
And it's your brain. It's not your muscles. It's not physicality. It's actually your brain. Yeah. And it's the infrastructure that you try to train it.
I think just touching on cognitive motor dual tasking, just so people kind of understand a bit more about what it actually is. Mm-hmm. So it's training the brain and the body at the same time. So in Singapore, we have one of the world's first cognitive dual tasking gym. There will be like 4 stations, and on each station you will have a physical exercise and a cognitive exercise that you have to do, and everything's timed, just like if you were going to an F45 or a BFT class.
What would be an example of like both?
You have to kind of like run on the treadmill, then you have to do maybe some jump lunges, and then there's another wall that's got coloured lights on it, and you have to read the letter. Maybe it says written blue, but it's in the colour red, then you have to hit the red lights. Okay. But it's trying to confuse you because the word's blue, or like vice versa.
That sounds like an athlete's playground. I feel like I'd love that.
It's really fun. It's actually really fun. I was a bit hesitant. I was a bit skeptical that it was going to be a good workout. I was like, I feel like this is going to be easy. And I was absolutely gassed at the end of it. Yeah.
And that frustration part's interesting because we've done it in a few different settings. And like your muscles, you feel you get fatigued, right? Yeah. I think the frustration is your brain getting fatigued. And like, so you have to kind of embrace it, that like that frustration feeling is actually you're stretching those muscles, if you want to think in your brain. So from tennis though, to what was your next move after that? What was your...
Yeah. So tennis, still playing tennis, but obviously post college, went into investment banking. So drove my car across the country and started a job in investment banking, which was a whirlwind. I mean, it wasn't easy by any terms, but what was interesting is it all came from tennis. Like the connections that I made were from tennis, and it was sort of just, I went through my entire network, and it just happened to be tennis players that were the most willing to let me through the door and have an interview or this and that. So right after college, I had an extra year of eligibility for tennis. So I went right into a master's program. So I spent the better part of that year in the first year of the master's program, reaching out to this one company, the investment bank based in LA. And I probably got ghosted like, I don't know, 6 months out of the year in this process. And they probably thought I was a little crazy. I was just like throwing them work samples that I was doing. I was teaching myself how to do, all the technical stuff with banking. And I was so persistent that at some point they were like probably just annoyed with me and said, all right, well, like give you an interview. Did an interview and they said, look, we can't fly you out, but if you want, we can like meet with you in person. So I flew myself out. Took that chance, met with them, and just like kind of shoved my resume down their throat for the better part of a year. And then eventually it actually got serious and there was an opening and I ended up getting the job. So it was a huge lesson in like just being persistent and following up and how far that can get you, even if you're not like coming from an Ivy League, right? So it was an interesting way that it actually ended up happening.
In England, we call that being scrappy.
Scrappy, yeah, for sure.
And I love it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm feeling inspired. Given the road ahead that we've got, I'm like, okay, I'm all right. I can do that.
Perseverance.
I can get scrappy.
Yeah. In finance, though, because I'm really curious if like you're so aware of decision fatigue in tennis at high performance, like that has to translate to finance, right? Like that mental resilience and stuff that you built, not even like the scrappiness. I'm just talking about like endurance for a day mentally. Like how did you see decision fatigue in your time at a bank? Like how, and maybe a good question is how did tennis help you with that, right? For that resilience component. Yeah,
you definitely see it working in banking for sure. I think, it was a different pressure set because it felt so much more real, and the weight of the decisions. We had clients now, and there's $100 million deals getting tossed around. So I felt a little bit like imposter syndrome for the first couple of years, right? Like, should I really be making these decisions? So it was a battle. Like, every day was tough. I mean, you're working, 12 to 16-hour days, sometimes all-nighters. So yeah, I think the decision fatigue was more real in finance. I don't think I handled it the same as I did in tennis. I think I should have, in hindsight, probably taken more time to like step away, go for a walk if like I'm feeling myself hitting that limit, as opposed to like bullying it through, because that's kind of what I did with tennis. It's just like you keep training, keep overtraining. But with finance, with Excel, with like, modeling and all this sort of, really nitty gritty stuff, like you can't bully that through. Sometimes you do have to step away and let your mind reset. But I just constantly felt the pressure of like 10 clients, 10 team members, all 100 private equity firms that are investing in our clients. So there's like hundreds of people that I felt like I was making decisions for every single like moment of the day. So it didn't feel like I could take a break. And I think that's why a lot of people burn out in investment banking, because that's exactly what it is. It doesn't let up. And the decision fatigue is probably more real in that type of job than what I experienced in tennis.
I got a question for Shawn. Just is it like chronic? My understanding of decision fatigue now is that if you go to bed and you have a good night's sleep, that you wake up and you're kind of ready to go again in the morning. But if you're in a job that like relentless, like are you starting on the back foot every day? Does it ever let up, or does it get worse over time, or does it just reset and you're back to the beginning? You're back to your best possible state every morning?
Your susceptibility to decision fatigue, at least the evidence we know to date, is very much dependent, if you want to think of like the climate of your body, right? So are you in chronic stress? Yeah. So stress, we know, actually causes a dysregulation of that protein, GLT1 that actually is pulling away glutamate from our synapses and making communication much easier, right? So like chronic stress can have dramatic changes in how well your brain communicates within lobes and between lobes. And sleep is obviously super important. You're right. It does restore decision fatigue, but that's assuming you have a quality night's sleep. So like say, I don't know, maybe 12 years ago, a huge discovery was made in neuroscience because there's so much waste that builds up in our brain, right? Your brain is 2% of your body mass, but uses 20% of your oxygen. And neuroscientists didn't know how all that waste was leaving our brain. For decades, we had no idea. It had to have happened. We just didn't know how. Then the discovery was made called the glymphatic system. And basically at a certain stage in your sleep cycle, your cells actually kind of pull apart a bit, and then the whole brain is flushed. And then all that waste is dropped into your lymphatic system, and then it goes out. So the quality of sleep is critical. But if you're telling me you're working like 14, 16-hour days, you're not having quality sleep.
I was dreaming in Excel. I remember having like running through like it was terrible.
Yeah. So you're not quality sleep. Yeah. Stress is going to be chronic, right? And so you're going to be, maybe you start your day and if you were just get back fresh from vacation, ready to go, maybe decision fatigue hits you in a few hours or 4 hours, right?
Yeah.
But if you're in that situation, it's going to happen near instantly. What's fascinating to me though is like so much money, right? In investment banking. But like you're not positioning your decision makers to make good decisions. No. If I put you in that environment, like maybe it's 30% of what I could actually be getting out of your brain, right? And it seems like old school thought is more hours. But the reality is, and evidence to date, like those loan application officers, is there's probably a point where you're actually losing money for your business, right? Yeah. And it's smarter just to send people home because the brain has hit this physical limitation, right?
Well, that's where I would find myself, like any of the slip ups that I did have or errors and whatever I'm doing, like would come, when I'm severely fatigued after a long day. And it's like, all right, these aren't deal ending things, but if I look back at all the slip ups that I did have, they all came when I was super fatigued. And that's not good for the client. That's not good for the company. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for me. So you can't communicate that though when you're in that pressure cooker, because it comes off as like weakness, and they're like, well, we have the next person lined up from Harvard, so we'll just slot you out. So like that's what I mean. It's a different pressure set because you're not safe ever.
And the thing about decision fatigue, what's so important is it doesn't cause catastrophic failures in decisions. But it does cause you just to consistently underperform.
Yeah.
That's what it does. It doesn't cause you to make a terrible life-altering decision. Usually, it just means you're always off your game when you have it, right? Yeah. And so, investment bankers is just a poor investment decision for your employees, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if drinking when you have decision fatigue does equal catastrophic decisions.
So yes, it can. Obviously, it can. More commonly, though, I would say it's not going to cause something like alcohol. Of course, you're making decisions under a drug, an influence, right? So you're not. Whereas decision fatigue, you're still yourself. It's just your normal logical processes isn't just there, right? Yeah. So maybe a little more impulsive, but you're not a danger behind the wheel sort of thing, right?
Since I started working for myself and switched careers, like my sleep has become my number one priority, and my sleep efficiency and hours of sleep and everything has been, fantastic. And I really think that's probably the number one thing that has led me to not only having success in like what I'm doing now, but I think making good decisions like day to day, the opportunities that are starting to come through the door. I think it's all like sleep's a huge part of it.
Science would completely agree with you.
Yeah. And this is all qualitative, just like feeling, but like I know that the science also backs it up.
100%. People are always looking for like magical solutions to a lot of things, but sleep is just absolutely essential from a brain perspective.
And I was coming from 4 or 5 years of no sleep where, like if I got 4 to 5 hours a night, that's like a good night.
So what triggered the decision to leave investment banking? Because that's huge.
One was the stress, and which turned into chronic illness. I actually developed ulcerative colitis as a result of it's kind of like Crohn's. It's an inflammatory disease from the stress. Long story short, it was really bad. I was starting to think, okay, long term, this is not sustainable. Like this is going to kill me, quite literally, the stress or whatever it is. Number 2, I think the whole time I was battling this imposter syndrome to the extent that I just didn't feel like I belonged. And I realized just because I can do the job, just as I can do the math, whatever's required, doesn't mean I should. I always felt like very different from the people who were really bought into this banking, private equity, finance world, even though I had the credentials for it, right? I have, BS in finance. I have an MBA in finance and investments, whatever. And I was like, this doesn't feel like me at all. So there was this whole identity conflict at the same time. And then I think the third thing was, I always wanted to have my own business, run my own ship, do my own thing. I think I'm very much like my dad in a lot of ways. Growing up, I saw he always had his own businesses. He, turned down law school and did his own thing in tennis. And he's always had this flexibility in this schedule where he was like super involved in our day to day, and just made his own schedule and sort of engineered his life backwards as opposed to like working and then filling in the rest. And I was like, that sounds like that's for me. Like, I want to do that. I want to build that now so that I can have that long term for like my family. So those were sort of the 3 things that, life was just screaming at me like, yo, you should not be doing this. Let's try something else. And that's easier said than done. Like stripping away from that and really unidentifying with Josh, the investment banker, was like a huge hurdle to get over in my late 20s. So yeah, that took some time because I had such a strong identity to being a banker that it almost felt wrong of me to do it, even though everything was screaming like, yes, you should step away from this.
How did it feel when you did?
It was the most relief of all time. It came in like little moments. It wasn't all at once because I think there was this guilt for sure. There was like a 6-month period from when I left the last. I worked at 2 banks in the 4 to 5 years, and I left the last job. There was about 6 months where I was still interviewing with other companies, interviewing at corporate finance roles, maybe doing something else in finance. And I I turned down a couple offers, private equity, corporate finance roles, like would have been the safe option. I mean, great pay, like great roles, exactly what you would sort of look for after investment banking. And I remember making that decision of, okay, this is like the safety net. Like I could easily take this and it might be a little better version of what I'm doing, but it just felt like in my gut, like this is not the right thing to do. That I think is when I felt like, okay, I'm taking a bit of a leap now. But I tricked my mind into thinking that it wasn't risky. And I sort of had this plan for myself where I said, okay, I'm going to do 3 months of content. I'll go all in. Because things with content started to kind of pick up a little bit. I was doing it on the side as like an outlet from banking. And I said, let me do 3 months. If I hit my financial goal that I have for myself in month 3, I'll keep going. If not, I'll keep interviewing. That way it's like a calculated risk. And I'm not being so delusional that like my family's like, are you okay? So that's how I tricked myself into having a great 3 months. By month 3, I hit my goal and I was like, okay, another 3 months, hit my goal. And now I'm 6 months into like basically doing content full time, figuring out what that means because there's so many different ways to do it. And then it got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm making the same money that I am applying for these jobs, like the same exact salary. Why? And I have this freedom. I can make my own schedule. My lifestyle is better. My health is getting better. Started figuring out all of my chronic issues and getting them under control. So then it was like, okay, this is becoming pretty obvious that I should keep leaning into this thing that's working and not go back. And then I really just committed to it, and it's continued to just grow and grow and grow. And it's been, it's been incredible. And now I look back and I'm like, yeah, I could never go back to doing it ever. And that's what gets me up in the morning, really, is honestly, originally it was a little bit of fear that like, oh, is this all going to come crashing down? Like, is this real? Like, is this actually working? And now there's such a foundation there of seeing how well it does work and sort of the systems that I've put in place to like build a career for myself, that I wouldn't even entertain going back.
I want to talk about the ego because I think the ego does creep in when making career choices. What's kind of a practical way that you were able to strip the ego out of the big decision?
It's interesting. For me, it was getting back to tennis, actually. Not to say I stopped playing it entirely, but I really started playing it and training a lot more seriously the last couple of years when I was going through this transition. I think whenever I'm on a tennis court, it's like I'm a kid again, like instantly I'm transported back to the exact same things that I was doing since, 10 years old. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, like if there's something practical that you can do, I would try to put yourself into a mindset, whatever it is for you. For me, it's tennis, where you're engaging with sort of your younger self again, and that child version of you. And I think that's what brought me back to who I really am, was just playing more tennis again.
I love that. And that is, again, similar to me. I've always been very creative. Yeah. And I got 2 young kids, and they're super creative. It's the paints are out constantly, making things,
nice.
Junk modeling and everything. It's really cool. And having kids brings you back, I think, to your childhood and your creative self as well. And then I did something called The Artist's Way, which is like, it's a really famous book by Julia, I forget her surname, Cameron maybe, and it's 12 weeks, and each week you take yourself on an artist date, and you do lots of morning pages. So when you wake up in the morning, you have to get all of your thoughts down on 3 pieces of paper. Just write like whatever's coming into your head, even if it's absolutely nonsense. And then you do kind of creative tasks each week. But one of the things is to take yourself on an artist date. And just throughout that whole process, it was, taking you back to things that you really enjoy. Like one week I'd do a pottery class. Like another week I don't know, just take myself to the art gallery, and getting back to things that I was like, truly connected to who you are. And that helped me a lot.
It's funny because I haven't even thought about it until you asked it, but like again, the timeline makes sense. I started playing so much more tennis as soon as I was going through all this. I even went home for a month of those 6 months where I was sort of in limbo, And I went home back to the academy that I grew up at and trained at. And my dad was, running the tennis club there. And I was like, I miss my family. I didn't spend a lot of time with them when I was working in banking. Number one, let me go home and spend time with them. But number two, I started coaching at the academy, and I said, I'll just do it for a month or two, just as like a way to pay my rent while I'm gone. And I guess get back to like my roots. And in hindsight, it's funny like that I made that decision to do that, because I wasn't consciously thinking this is going to fix something or bring something out in me. It just felt like the right thing to do. And of course it was. Like, I was literally in my childhood environment for an extended period of time, and it almost felt like healing in a way. And then I came back, and that's when all the content stuff started, and it really started to take off, and I like committed to it. And I feel like that was almost like a little fix for me. But yeah, I just hadn't thought of any of this until now. So it all makes perfect sense.
I mean, I think observationally, it's like making space, just getting away from it. And also like society's screaming at us for more. Yeah. Like whatever you feel or whatever is going wrong in your life, the answer is adding something, right? Like, oh, I just need this, or I need this, or I need this. Whereas quite often the answer is just taking it all away, right? Yeah. And that's our brains designed that way too, right?
Now that you're a creator, there is pressure, right? Like, creating itself is fun, right? That's the fun part. But, the reality is you've got to publish, you've got to hack the algorithm, you've got to get those views, build your audience. Yep. Like, how do you feel about kind of managing those pressures?
I think what I've learned about myself is being like a tennis player, a solo sport, my whole life. You learn to put all the pressure and deal with it like on yourself. And I kind of like that in my career as a creator. It feels very similar, and that you're a one-man ship, right? And all the pressure to succeed or fail is on you. And I kind of like that. And then what you do from there, whether you start businesses or whatever, who you work with is sort of a consequence of that. But I love that all the pressure's on me again, because it feels very much like tennis. It's been a learning curve for sure. There's a consistency component to it, being super consistent, putting out content every day, sort of having like a methodology to it, which is very much like tennis for me. It feels like training. It feels like showing up every day to get your workouts in, whatever. It's the same muscle, just a different game. So I think having like systems in place, like I know I'm going to create, content every single day. It's like almost a schedule. I think having those systems in place takes a lot of pressure away, because now I'm running it like a business, right? Tracking every single, client that I work with. I still use Excel, except now I use it for, tracking my business. I kind of just applied everything that I did in banking with having like a very regimented, structured way of doing things. And I just applied it to content.
It's probably great Excels.
The
shoots are probably really good.
They're pretty, they're pretty nerdy for sure. Yeah, you wouldn't think a content creator is doing this. So I think that's how I deal with the pressures that come with it. Like having the systems in place that take that pressure off.
Yeah. And being comfortable in your own skin, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's a whole nother thing is there's no way to get past it. You have to get reps. Like anything else, I think the best creators are the ones that started the earliest, because they just have more camera time. They know what their tone and delivery is. They know how it communicates with their audience. They're constantly iterating, and it's this immediate feedback loop. Like, what's working, and if it works, you lean into it. So it's this 10,000 hours thing, just like any other sport or craft or career. Like the more you put into it, the better you get at it. So that's another thing too, just leaning on that and having confidence in the fact that like, I just need to keep making more and I will get better, and trusting that like process. That takes some of the pressure off too. And then seeing it work, it's like, oh, this is actually the way to do it.
Yeah, that's like great advice for us, because kind of we're in our kind of early days of our kind of creator journey, both in the podcast. I think, this is maybe episode 35, 36, maybe 40. And also in social, we're trying to kind of build platforms, talk about decision fatigue, decision making, decision strategy, trying to kind of own that niche. and it's tricky because that as a niche isn't it's not a classic vertical. Like it's not, tennis, or it's not. It's quite a new.
Yeah, I've never come across any podcast or content that's like specific to decision making. But
it's weird, but though it's like the most important thing.
I know.
So I think we've got a good opportunity to own it.
We all are the sum of our decisions, right?
For sure.
Like,
Yeah, but I think just so even what you were saying then, I was almost like listening and taking it to, okay, we've got to just get the reps in. And we're still so early, like particularly kind of when we look
just
at
got
Instagram.
on social media for my first time.
Yeah. And particularly just on Instagram, and now we're still trying to figure out, like I wouldn't even say we've not had a single piece yet that's got enough feedback to go, okay, we're on to something.
Yep.
Totally honest, and I talk about decisions and decision fatigue as being a mom, as being an endurance athlete, as being a CMO, or just kind of in daily life. And Shawn kind of really comes at it from a science angle. Any advice? Would we just keep going until we get a hook that works? Yeah. Like, what's your advice?
I think there's a few creators that I follow from like I'm going to study you standpoint. So I think finding the podcasts, the creators, whatever it is, that you can use as material to really observe and study. I think there's two ways that you can approach social media and scrolling and everything. It's like you can just consume, or you can use it as like, I'm studying this. And that's what I do. So every time I'm scrolling, I'm on there for the purpose of like, that's some good inspiration. I'm going to save that into like whatever folder I have for it. So it's also how you use social media, right? Because we're all guilty of like being on it for X hours a day. You might as well use it to your benefit and sort of study while you're on it and see what's working.
That's great advice. Are you really honest? Because I consume, but I've got a lot of like entrepreneurs, business owners, a lot of inspirational quotes on there, and I'm feeling it. I'm like, this is good, I've got multiple Instagrams, so I've got ones, more private ones that are for like.
Struggle to stay on it for like any length of time. My one Instagram account.
Your one Instagram account. Why is that, Shawn?
I don't know. I guess it's scary because like if you do start, I'll like put my phone down and like that was 45 minutes.
Yeah, it goes by fast.
Like it goes by so fast. You're under like a time warp. And then every time I leave the time warp, I'm disappointed by the amount of time I spent in it.
Do you feel the same when you go on Reddit?
Well, no, because Reddit's like really, it's mostly science stuff, right? So like I like, because it links me out to read things I'm interested in. Whereas Instagram I find is just like useless.
Yeah.
Like I don't.
We got to switch your algorithm.
I was about to say.
I know. Yeah. And like
what you engage with.
No, but then also I think I told you, I think it was Instagram or maybe I tried TikTok, but like there's a video of like a horse getting reshoed. Right. So I grew up in like Western Canada. So I'm like, oh, like that guy did a really good job like reshoeing this horse.
Seen some of those, yeah.
Right. And like it was really dirty and clean. I'm like, that was great. And like a video went by and the next one was like another horse. I'm like, oh, cool. Like that's so like all I saw was like horses being reshoed for like a month.
Yeah.
So like it dives me down to stuff that I'm not really keen on. But I do prefer Reddit just because I find it's not so much of a sink. But yeah.
I will say too, like I was probably doing it for a year or so before I started to like begin to understand what I need to do to take this to another level and get some traction. So I think a lot of and maybe this is like an obvious one, but a lot of people will try to go for something viral and give it a couple months and it's like, oh, why isn't this working? Like anyone can make one video that gets 50 million views. Like anybody I think can do that now by accident, but can you make 50 videos that get 1 million views? Like that's where you need to find the consistency and you can't get past that without reps.
And one thing I think I've come to believe into is like to do this as a living, like you have to be authentic. I couldn't imagine putting forward a persona, something fake. It would take so much work to like act the whole time.
And they'll sniff it out too, your audience.
I imagine they will, right? And so like I think, and that's probably one of my first mistakes is I was like trying to be more of like a professor giving knowledge instead of just being like myself, right?
Yeah.
Like So I think you have to be authentic, because that's the only sustainable way to make it happen, right? So way more Star Trek posts as well.
Oh, yeah. Hey, there's
that's where I'm leading it to. If you start to see those.
Star Trek on that, but I was like, he's going to drop Star Trek into his episode again.
Yeah. Neuroscience is cool, but yeah.
There was one thing I saw yesterday from this creator, JT Barnett, who I follow. I want to give him credit so that it's not original, but I thought it was brilliant, and it's exactly how I think about content. But he actually made a video and said it. He was saying that every like great creator, if you look at the creators that have like tens of thousands versus hundreds of thousands or millions of followers, the difference is a couple things. They have some sort of like series or consistent style of content that is like the backbone of their content creation. And that's maybe 70-60% of what they do. The other 30-40% is trial and error. They're constantly trying new things and then getting that feedback and seeing if it works. And if it does, run with it. If not, try something else. Like the whole name of the game is really, especially initially, trial and error. Yeah. And then once you sort of find something that sticks, it's like you want to have a backbone, and then you want to leave space for trying new things. And I totally agree with that. And I'm looking at like the way that I make content, and that's exactly what I'm starting to do now. And it's really starting to pick up. And I didn't like see that video and then try to do that. I was like, this is working for me. I saw that video and was like, damn, like he put that in the perfect words. Like that's what's happening. Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense.
I've got one last question for you. Mm-hmm. If listeners or viewers are standing at their own crossroads, pulled between safety, ego, and let's call it clarity, or freedom, what's the first step in building like a decision framework that they can trust?
I think for me, that's been my decision framework, is like I need to have the most confident version of myself, and the rest is gonna take care of itself. But really feeling good about who I am, and yeah, just having like this confidence that I'm not being delusional, right? It's risk, but it's calculated. So I think the framework is like definitely take risks. I think it was a Jeff Bezos quote or something. It was like the riskiest thing you can do in life is like taking no risk at all. So take risk, but make it calculated. Be smart about it, right? And build your confidence up, whatever you get that from. Like be the confident version of yourself. Why not? And then lean on your family too. I think that's a recipe for it to work for anybody.
I think we know the answer to this question, so I'm going to ask it anyway. Yeah. What is the safe decision that you're glad you didn't take? Yeah,
definitely turning down those job offers coming out of banking. I think that would have been really easy. I literally had the offers in my lap. And I'm glad that I didn't. I mean, I can remember those phone conversations. One of them was, it was really interesting. The private equity one, biggest offer I would have ever gotten. Great, position, whatever, all fine and dandy. And she said, look, we like your technical abilities, your interview process, everything was actually better than the other candidate. It was me and one other guy at this point. But we're not a fan of this content side hustle stuff that you're doing. If you want this, you're going to have to shut that down. Like the recruiter told me that on the phone, and I was like, you're asking me like quite literally to change myself for a group of people. Like, I'm not doing that. So that was a huge moment. Definitely glad I didn't take that safe route.
Wild that to me a company would ask that.
Yeah, robots.
I know.
Not humans, robots.
Yeah,
I'll never forget it.
I know. Josh, this has been such a great conversation.
Likewise.
Covered so many different areas of decision making. But it's been great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, no, that was great episode. I really appreciate like the transparency and honesty, and I think a lot of people are going through what you went through. So it's nice to kind of see someone who went through the other side and still had the struggles and whatnot.
Yeah.
To everyone still watching, listening, wherever you are, we will link to all of Josh's profiles below. Give him a follow because his content is brilliant. I particularly love all the millennial content. I can relate to a lot of it very, very much. And to all of our listeners, as always, thank you very much and make every decision count. We'll see you next week. Bye.